So I heard, and I'll just throw this in there, word on the street is that Applebees is taking the spot of Taco Bueno. That's what I'm hearing. That's the word on the street for me. You don't have to talk about that if you can't.
Well,
but I had to ask. Well, if you're tuning in again, listeners, thank you so much for checking this out. We're excited about today's episode. We've got our new guest, Danielle Williams, here in the house, y'all.
Nice.
Whoop, whoop. And she's our city's economic development director. As you all know, if you listened to our prior episode, and I know we all here at the table did, we talked a lot about growing Victoria, so we're going to talk about that. But of course, before we do, we always like to kick it off with casual chat questions just to get to know you a little bit.
okay.
So I'm just going to get right into it. What business, because you work a lot with businesses, right,
Yep.
Danielle? If any, would you prefer comes to Victoria? And this might be a family favorite, maybe a personal fave that you like kind of go out of town to, and you're like, man, that would be really cool to have here locally.
I mean, there are a lot. And honestly, a lot of what drives what I want to go after is what the community puts out there, right? And I'm always watching social media to see what everybody likes or wants to see. But
Right.
for me personally, here recently I noticed there's this new restaurant called Chicken and Pickle.
I've heard of that.
And it's not quite a chain. They do have like a couple of locations, I believe, in Texas. But essentially, they have a restaurant attached with a bunch of pickleball courts. And I'm like, that's
I was not expecting that to be the pickle part of it all.
yeah, no,
But
it's
that's
really cool because they've got the bar, they've got the food, and then they have a bunch of indoor or outdoor pickleball courts. And I'm like, this would be perfect.
Pickleball just coming up, becoming like the
Yeah.
next baseball or something. That's crazy.
Yeah, I think Victorians would
Yeah.
love that because I mean, ultimately, we need a lot of more entertainment in town.
That's
right?
what I was actually going to say.
Yeah.
Was I would, as a family, growing family with two young ones, would love Dave and Buster's
Oh yeah.
or Main Event. That would be so fun. It would keep them busy
Like
too. We could give them a good nap.
An enclosed area
Yeah.
where your
Yep.
kids can run around somewhat. You don't have to worry too
Thank
much
you.
about where
Yes.
they're at.
Aircrafters has that. Shout out to them for that playground in the back. But
Yeah.
you know, if we could get more
I think
stuff
they can
like
get
that,
through
that'd
the
be cool.
fencing, though. The kids can. I think you just slide through.
You got to keep an eye on your kids, AJ.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm trying to say. It's scary.
AJ, what business would you want to come to Victoria?
Oh, man. I mean, how do I eat chicken and pickles? Like, I got to figure out, I got to find another business that incorporates some kind of sports involved in it, too. But,
Best of both worlds.
I mean, I love Fuego. That's just the College Station,
yes.
Texas
Good
A&M
one.
type of thing. And I actually recently had a conversation with somebody that had said that was something that had been tried before, which was interesting. So,
Really?
yeah.
Danielle's the one in the house to know all about that.
Yeah, I don't want
That's
to,
crazy.
but that's what I just heard, and I was like, oh, we almost,
Yeah.
maybe, I don't know.
They're Blanco queso. Oh my god. Anyway,
Yeah.
I won't go down that path because I'm going to start getting hungry. Sam, what about you?
Well, I actually have a gift for this because I, for years, manifested us having an ice cream place downtown, and now we have one, and it's Green Cow, and I love it so much.
Yeah.
But with that being said, what else we need downtown is something that's like a fast food place or like a grab and go kind of place that's
yeah.
quick where you can go buy your lunch, take it with you, and then go sit out on the plaza and eat it. I think that would be really nice.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
great idea.
And there was a Subway downtown a long time
Yeah.
ago, and
Yep.
it's been years now. But something along those lines. It doesn't have to be fast food. It doesn't have to be a chain. It just has to be something that you can grab and go, sort of.
Yeah.
Cool. I like that. Well, Danielle, you're the one in the business industry within this group right here. We could tell you all day long what we would like, but you tell us a little bit so our listeners can get to know you. What do you personally do for the city?
So a lot of my focus is retail recruitment. So that includes restaurants and the entertainment industry and also just shopping in general. And I go to different conferences. I meet with brokers or the franchisees and you name it, the people that are involved with getting those businesses expanded down in our area. And I just try to encourage them to look at Victoria, consider it, and I tell them about Victoria because a lot of times they don't know about Victoria. I get them educated on all the great things we have here going for us so that they want to, start their own business or expand it down here.
Right.
Yeah, so we do that mostly, but now with this whole Growing Victoria initiative, my role is expanding into other areas of economic development, whether it's affordable housing or small business development, which we already kind of do a little bit of that with our downtown folks.
Right.
But we already have a lot of great key partners in Victoria that support the small businesses, such as the Chamber of Commerce or the SBDC.
Yeah.
And so we just help promote them in their efforts as partners
Awesome.
to help our downtown business folks.
When you were talking about recruitment, do you do that alone?
No, actually. We do have a contract with the retail coach. Aaron Farmer is the president, I believe, vice president. And so him and his team, they usually travel sometimes with me to these conferences and such. And they have more feelers out there in the retail industry.
Sure.
And they can, directly contact them and say, hey, have you looked at Victoria? And actually, just the other day, there was an update call. I have regular update calls with them, and they give me all the great and wonderful news.
Nice.
And I heard a lot of good things.
Really?
Yes. So there's a lot of exciting things happening, a lot of movement, kind of behind the scenes that I don't ever get to really share with anybody.
Right.
Because you don't want to say, oh, this restaurant's coming, and then something
right.
happened and they don't.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, whether it be the economy or the market.
Yeah.
But there was some really good leads yesterday in that meeting.
That's a good way to put it, as a lead. That's exciting.
Yep.
And obviously, I'm professional. I'm not going to go and pick your brain and make you feel like you got to, spill the beans on me. So we won't do that. Maybe. I actually have a word on the street if we can kind of kick up that part. We don't have to wait till that segment. I'm going to ask you.
Okay.
So I've literally heard from two different people who will stop me and I don't know if they knew we hosted this podcast or if they just recognized me or if they just were really chit chatty.
Yeah.
It was just someone at a store I was visiting. Okay. We'll just put it anonymously. And they said, so I heard, and I'll just throw this in there. Word on the street is that Applebees is taking the spot of Taco Bueno. If you don't know where Taco Bueno is and you're listening, it's that spot over there where the Big Five is what we call them, right? Where McAllister's and Dunkin' Donuts is currently.
Yep.
Taco Bueno was here and gone, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But that's what I'm hearing. That's the word on the street for me. You don't have to talk about that if you can't.
Well,
But I had to ask.
yeah, so that I do have exciting news with that. Applebee's To Go is actually going to move into that location. That's what
Really?
Retail Coach shared with me
Oh,
yesterday.
that's awesome. This is literally the first we're hearing about this.
Yeah, so we're excited about that.
That's
I think it's going to be
cool.
a great fit for
Yeah.
Victoria. I think they're going to do really well. But just keep in mind, it's not going to be your full-fledged restaurant where you go in and
Well,
sit
that's
down.
what I was
Right.
wondering. I was
It's an
like,
express.
Yeah.
It's an express model. It's to
Yeah.
go model.
it's what Sam wanted packaged. It's just on the
Exactly.
north
But
side.
it's clear across town.
Yeah.
No.
We need Applebee's South.
I guess Applebee's so I can take it to Ethel Tracy Park and eat it there.
There you go.
But I want that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, who in America doesn't like a nice Applebee's night with the family,
Right.
right? That's
Yeah.
just what America is. Applebee's.
That's funny that we're talking about dining in and a quick, I guess a QSR, right?
Yep. Quick service
Location.
restaurant.
Yeah, QSR. I was actually just reading to, I guess brief my knowledge on this whole industry within restaurants in America in 2024 specifically. And one of the articles I was reading was talking about how restaurants dining in was kind of going backwards a little bit, the decline. And I thought, well, is it COVID? But COVID was 4 years ago. And it's the aftermath of that and all the
Absolutely.
extended costs, inflation
Yep.
most recently, and then overhead costs that we don't always think about beyond just the costs, I guess, it takes to actually deliver a product or a service.
Yeah.
And so the habits, even after COVID, of customers is also going more towards quick service,
Absolutely.
not so much dining in. Although I'm not saying that's always indicative of Victoria and that we can't always have more restaurants that are dining in here. That's great. But it's just the trend nationally. So that kind of led me to think, is that what you're kind of seeing? And maybe your retail coach guy, what do we call it? Oh, Aaron Farmer.
Yeah,
Is that
Aaron
what he's seeing as well beyond
Yeah.
Victoria? Because I think a lot of times, would y'all agree, we hear of a business, maybe along Navarro, because it's so highly visible, going out or maybe moving or closing its doors. And we're like, "Brr, brr."
Yeah.
Where's my sound? George, come on, production crew. My
You're doing great. You're doing great,
Thanks,
George.
thanks.
We appreciate you, George.
Salute. Anyway, slightly bitter. Just kidding. So we hear of it going out or closing its doors, and we get bummed as a community because we support our local businesses, right?
Yep.
But I thought I would kind of ask you, is that something you're seeing here locally? Do you feel like our residents know that about businesses in general? I mean, what would you say to someone who asks like, oh, PJ's we just recently heard is closing its doors. Actually, they're rebranding is what I
Yes,
recently heard as well.
rebranding.
But so that's a good thing. But for others like Red Lobster, like we're bringing it back a few years, Hastings or Bed Bath & Beyond, all these other big chains.
Yeah. So all of those that you just mentioned, that's nothing that was in our control,
That's
right?
what I was
A lot of the closures are not in our control. A lot of it's driven by the economy, the national economy. And it's not just, I know with us, it might seem, since it's our home and it's in our home, that it's a Victoria problem, but it's
Right.
really not. It's the whole nation. And
Right.
so when Red Lobster closed, they closed several other stores outside of Victoria and across the United States. And same with Bed Bath & Beyond and even Hastings, right?
Yeah.
And of course, with Hastings, you had to shift from getting your ebooks and everything online versus going to the actual store and getting it. Now, I know Jessica in the library would argue with me with it about that, but I mean, there was a shift. So going back to the other part about the restaurants condensing their dining room space, that is something that we have definitely seen since COVID, because you had this hard push for to-go meals and like your, what's it called, Uber Eats in your favor, making it so easy for you to just order it and have it delivered to your home. And they were like, well, let's capitalize off this. Let's shrink our dining room space and we'll just do more of that and still have some seating, but not, it was just kind of like a thing that happened from COVID. And just like Longhorn Steakhouse, their dining room is way smaller than any of their original Longhorn Steakhouses. That if you've ever been to one, it's a lot smaller. If I would even venture to say that if they built another Olive Garden, it would be smaller. But that one's been around for a long time, because it's just the culture has changed from dining in and going out and eating. It's just order it in.
And that's not a model necessarily like that we drive. It's
No,
just a national
no.
model that we can't really control.
Right.
Because there could be like factors that I can definitely see people talking negative on it and being like, well, there's not as many jobs then if you don't have like a dining space for the local economy. But that's just a factor we don't necessarily control when it comes to a national business.
Well, but then in that same token, you're going to have more delivery drivers.
Yes, that's true.
Right?
Yeah.
So maybe not
Opportunities.
not more
different type
wait
of
staff, but
opportunities.
then you're going to have more people driving
That's
the
true.
meals.
That's true.
So it's like a little bit of a trade-off there.
Right. That's why I wanted to ask, because like I said, I know that. Like I said, I was doing research this morning and it's telling me there's a national industry impact. Not only COVID, but maybe it was like back in the 80s or 90s, businesses wanted to really aggressively grow. So they spent a lot of money into advertising at the time. They spent a lot of money into overhead costs. And then they're playing catch up, if you will. And the prices are not decreasing. They're increasing big time. So it's like this balance of, those weaknesses maybe are starting to show. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of go down that path because residents tend to think, oh, we're not supporting local enough, or, man, what happened? So anyway, but there is something we can do. And what would you say, if any, what can we do in light of knowing all of that, if anything?
I mean, we still track like our retail leakage, and that's when you go and shop outside of Victoria, or, because I've heard a lot of people ask me, why don't we have a Costco? Well, the reality of it is we've got 2 Walmarts, we've got a Sam's, we've got 2 H-E-B's, one of them's a Plus store, and we've got a handful of Dollar Generals. And so
That's what I was gonna
Costco kind of, even though Costco is like a Sam's, more like a Sam's, it's still considered grocery, if you will, with some other things. But when those type of industries are looking to move into a town, they consider all of that before they move in, and then they consider your population density, right? So if we were to grow like we want to grow, then hopefully we could increase the population enough to where we could attract a Costco, right? But that's going to take time.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing I want to make sure that everybody understands is development and recruitment takes time. HTO is 2 years in the working, and they're just fixing to open. So, and that's a small scale. When you have like a larger store like that, it takes a little bit longer than that. It just doesn't happen overnight. It might feel that way because it's like, oh, construction's underway. But honestly, as part of what I do is I track all of those permits and things. And then as soon as I start recruiting them, then I'm following up with them. And then I'm like, yes, they filed a building permit. It's actually happening, you know?
Yeah.
But it's been going on for years before they actually start building.
Talk to us real quick, if you don't mind. Whoever's running the slides, can you move over to Toasted Yolk? We wanted to pull up this story. Shout out to The Advocate, by the way. They do a great job covering what's happening in our community. Chris Green was a reporter on this one. So Toasted Yolk, I was really excited about this one. It's a bigger, like you said, national chain. How long did it take to bring this one here? Was that anything that you were working on? Of course you were, but to what degree had that look?
Retail Coach actually helped out more with this recruitment. And it just worked out perfectly where we had that new strip center being built in front of Home Depot. And I was like, hey, we got this coming down the pipeline.
Right.
Push us out to anybody you think could fit in this space. And then they were able to secure Toasted Yolk. And that's just kind of how it all happened. It actually happened quicker because we already had somebody building the strip center. And they had a perfect spot to move into. So instead of just trying to find a site and make it work and all those kinds of things.
Right.
But yeah, I'm excited too because it's different, right? It's not another Mexican food restaurant. I'm not dissing the Mexican food.
Either.
I eat it almost every other day.
Same.
But as a morning choice, we got our brunch, I guess, too.
Yeah.
Yes, they do a great breakfast and brunch menu. I've been to the one in College Station and I enjoyed the heck out of it. So it was great.
Same.
It's another different option for everybody.
Yeah.
And this is over there by the Boot Barn, right?
Yep. It is right in front of. It's going to be right in front of the Boot Barn. Yeah. Nice. So space is already built. They're just starting to fit out the inside, and they'll be moving in soon.
Exciting.
One thing that I always think is a little bit sobering when we talk about recruitment is the sheer extent to which these retailers, when they're looking to come in, look at strictly data. Because when you think about it, they are looking at hundreds, if not thousands, of potential sites for their businesses. So just like how a lot of big companies will screen their resumes with some kind of automated system, they'll look at strictly what is the population size, are we X number of miles from a highway, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so they look at all of that stuff. They look at cell phone data. They look at, where do you tend to go shop, eat, and do all the things. They look at your path, even when you start at the mall, then go to Target, and then go to HEB. They look at where that main corridor is of traffic because they want to be in a spot where they're going to get the most visual attraction for people passing by. And that's all tracked through cell phone data. They don't have your name or your personal information. It's just showing a little ping saying, hey, this cell phone went from here to here. The other thing that they look into is like your, what's it called? Your socio-demographic. They're looking at, how you receive your marketing materials, how big is your household? Do you have kids? Do you not have kids? Are you seniors? What are you interested in the most? I mean, they really get into it. A lot of times when I go and recruit to these folks, sometimes they already know about Victoria and they're like, yeah, no, we already did all of our homework and we're not going to go there.
Wow.
So,
So they pay to get access to this data. And is that something we can turn off our settings? I'm just kidding.
No, but I have access to the same data.
To the businesses. Yeah. So you can then go in there and look at it and say, here's what our average household looks like in Victoria.
Right.
You'd be surprised. Right? You'd be surprised.
So that's what I was going to get into kind of next is as far as Victoria goes, what are some positive maybe feedbacks that you may have heard from businesses that when they choose Victoria, they're like, this is why we wanted to come to Victoria. Maybe it's conveniently located in a spot. Maybe, I don't know, maybe there's a lot of family households.
Right.
Is there anything like that you've heard maybe that we can take away from it as the community and be like, okay, we're building on something good here?
Yeah, I think a lot of the developers like to see, how the community receives other new developments when they move in. For point in case, this Toasted Yolk and the Advocate promoting that is great. That's great. And then they also look at what everybody's saying on social media. Are they excited? Are they not excited?
Yeah, right.
So the more we can just keep going and being excited about some of these new things, the better. But we have had a lot of growth in the retail industry in the last 3 years. And so that also turns the heads, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, what's going on over there?
Yeah.
They got some stuff going on. The other thing too is how favorable our boards, such as our Type B sales tax board or city council even, are willing to help with any incentives, right? And so we've been able to provide some incentives. Not all of them need incentives.
Right.
But we've been able to support them in that manner too, especially with Murdoch's. We helped out with that facade improvement grant over at the, I say facade improvement grant. It was a 380 agreement.
Gotcha.
And that helped with their development over there.
Let's talk about that because I think that's one of the misconceptions that people have in general about the city's funding is, well, you know, they've got a budget of X amount, millions of dollars. You know, you can use that towards employee pay. We talked about that last episode with Jesus, and it was like, no, I think we said not money doesn't. We said what we said was money doesn't grow on trees. But one of the things we should have said was not all money is created equal here at the city of Victoria. So can you talk about how that relates to the money that you can use towards economic development projects?
Sure. When I talk about Type B sales tax funds, that's sales tax dollars generated off of the purchase of items within the city, right? It goes into this side account, if you will, and there are certain laws and stipulations on that money for what we can actually spend it on. And the majority of it is infrastructure. So if a developer needs a new water line, sewer line, and we know that it's going to help with further development and not just that one spot, we tend to consider those and be very favorable with helping them out with some of those utilities. Also with the, Parks Department benefits off of the sales tax money because you can legally use that money for that. But there are other things that you can't necessarily, we cannot use that money, unfortunately, for raises. If we could, I'm sure we would jump on it in a heartbeat. But a lot of times, even that sales tax money, if you look at the capital improvements budget, that's where a lot of the money comes from to build the streets and the utilities in our city as well.
Right.
So, there's certain rules and regs, laws that you can't use that money for, and you can use it for.
Right. Well, Exhibit A, Public Safety Headquarters building. That was one of the buildings that, you know, they had to pull funds from certain budgets, but they could not use any of those funding towards employee pay.
Right.
There's just general fund is completely separate.
Yep.
So anyway, just had to make a point there. But can you go ahead?
Well, I was going to say, and to kind of sum it all up, because I know this is
that's always good. Sum it up for us, AJ.
We don't control what businesses come here. I think that's the valid point that we should make when our listeners are here listening to us talk.
Right. Yeah.
Is that, you know, we don't pay a company to, we don't, you know, put them in that building. We don't do all that. It's, at the end of the day, their choice. All we can do is show what we got. Hey, we'd love for you to come here. To your point, maybe there's incentives.
Yeah.
Whatever it may be. But I think that is a common misconception sometimes is that like the city brings it in.
Yeah.
Right.
Sam sees that a lot online, don't you, Sam? Bring Cracker Barrel. I always use that as an example. To Victoria.
I will never forget getting a Facebook message to our inbox that was flagged high importance. And I opened it.
We don't hate on you, resident. We're just using you as an example.
We're making an example of you.
High importance gets gets it read.
So
it
naturally I clicked on it and it said, why is there another Dollar General opening at Airline and Ben Jordan?
Oh, man.
That's a legit
And that's
argument
actually
people
right
are
by
making.
where I live.
Yeah.
And I really love having something that I can walk to if I forget to buy shampoo or if I forget to buy anything else.
Same.
Yeah.
So,
And that's where they
it
make
is
their
what
money.
you make of it.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more robust convenience store, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right?
it really is.
It's a convenience buy, and that's why there are so many, because they strategically locate them within so many minutes of drive time so that you would be more inclined to go there to get your milk, eggs, shampoo than to drive the extra 5 or 10 minutes
right.
to get to
Do it all the
H-E-B.
time.
I see you, DG. I see you, Dollar General now. Okay.
It's very strategic, but we
It
don't
is.
have any regulations that prevents them from coming, and that goes for any business, really.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's probably some businesses that we
Yeah,
can't have,
yeah.
but when it comes to retail and things, we don't have any regulations that stops them from. I mean, if they've cut a deal on some land and it fits their model, then they're going to go after it.
Yeah.
Can I hit on that real quick? Because, you know, we always talk about word on the streets. And one of the word on the streets that Sam touched on was the fact that we hear why are there too many Dollar Generals? Or not just that, but too many Mexican food joints here, too many this, too many that, car washes, What would you say to residents who say that or have that perspective? There might be another positive perspective on this.
Oh
that
man,
we're not considering.
I just think we should dub ourselves as the Tex-Mex capital of the state of Texas.
Just own it.
Right? That's what I'm saying. I mean, and just let everybody know, right?
Yeah.
We've got the best Mexican food here, is the way I see it. Because I know if I go anywhere else, I'm totally judging.
We take it for granted.
I'm totally judging the other Mexican food restaurants. I'm like, that's not like my Guadalajara over
we
here.
We take it for granted because I lived in Dallas for the longest time and I could never get a breakfast taco one thing up there.
Yeah.
But even
in
the
Dallas?
Tex-Mex was different.
Dallas is still in Texas. I thought you were going to say somewhere like Alabama, which my husband's from.
Technically,
and
it's like
the same there.
a whole nother state away.
Yeah. It feels like it sometimes. But to that point, I always tell people too, I think we have so many great Tex-Mex restaurants. Yes. And it's like every Friday, maybe we want other choices. That's awesome. But we're never disappointed in choosing like a Las Palmas or La Hacienda, Pinto Bean. All these. I mean, we got a great amount of choices to choose from. So you're right. Tex-Mex capital.
I just say own it, man.
Yeah, own it. And at the end of the day, we can't tell people to come or to go. That's their decision, and we should be supportive of it, is my opinion. Yeah. Be supportive.
And the majority of those restaurants are locally owned and operated.
Right.
Yeah. They're not a chain. And so we need to definitely support those folks.
Agreed.
And anytime that people ask, well, how many ... does one city need? The answer is as many as the free market says that we can
Once
have.
again,
I mean, if people are still going to shop there, I mean, they're going to build another one.
Yeah, exactly. You're right.
I mean, if they're making money, exactly.
Why?
There's clearly a need.
That's why I'm hoping HTO does really good because then they can build a second one on the south side of town.
Oh, heck yeah.
That'd be great.
I would take that.
Kind of like how Chick-fil-A did. That'd be great.
I love that. Well, this is usually the point where we do go into our word on the streets segment. Okay. And Sam's actually got a word about a literal street this time. I like to use it figuratively, but she's got a street to bring into this convo. You don't have to comment on it.
Okay.
But she does this in a fun way. AJ does too.
We're going to let Sam do this in her own fun way this time.
So this was I recognize this comments that we saw on the screen. This was actually on a post that PD did about a pretty bad wreck that happened at the intersection of Briggs and the Loop earlier this month. And I'm going to read this. We need a light there so bad. Accidents are happening there frequently, especially at 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. when traffic is heavy. It is really hard to access the feeder road because traffic is too heavy. And someone else commented below them, as someone who frequents this intersection, as in multiple times a day, every day, I second this. And then they tagged our page and they also tagged VPD's page, which I really appreciate that when people tag us and they have this something to share, which I think in the past couple of episodes we've shared some comments that were like a little bit snarky because we kind of like to, but, this person brought up a very valid point, I think, about a wreck that happened at this intersection. So I went over to Ken Gill, who is the director of public works. He used to be the city engineer. And I asked him, so what about this intersection? Why isn't there a light there? And just the exasperation and despair on that man's face. Because
I'm picturing it and right now.
Yeah, for that location, for like just listening right now, like what are some visual spots that people can trigger right away from Briggs in the intersection?
The Texan is kind of catty corner.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
just so that people in there, because I know how it goes sometimes. It's you're listening and you're like, oh, okay, I know where that's at.
And Briggs.
Yeah,
it's right by an overpass that's part of the loop, and that was actually part of the issue as to why there isn't a stoplight there because there's another one that's right over there.
Correct.
And that was what when I was talking to Ken about it, it became very clear that he knows it's a problem. He's a lot smarter than I am at a lot of things. I think he's been working in streets for longer than I've been alive, and so. You have to understand that if you're seeing this intersection where there's a problem and like, oh, we need a light there.
Right.
Like we know to an extent that it's a problem, but it's not always as simple as just putting a stop sign or a light there because that might upset the traffic flow in another area nearby. It might affect things like safety in other intersections.
And I can see that one definitely because there is a light
Absolutely.
That comes up shortly right afterwards too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So, but it is something that they're actively looking at.
When you say they, who is that? The city and TxDOT at all? Or is it just TxDOT?
There's some collaboration with TxDOT there, I believe. But based on our conversation, I know that Ken actually brought the issue up with some people, and they're going to continue looking at ways to improve the intersection, really address those kind of concerns. But I think it just really highlights how you can be working and trying to solve a problem, and it's not as simple as it might seem.
Yeah. Oftentimes is the life we live here in local government. You know, we see problems and the right people are working within their span of control, right, to do something about it. Some of the other people I wanted to make sure that you noted, I know that you were working with, because we talk often, was Maggie Bergeron in the MPO, Julie Fulgham in Planning Development Services Department, and then, of course, our city manager, Jesus, was at the forefront of that, you know, making sure that we were getting all these facts and information about the situation compiled so that you can then respond to this resident. So I just want to say that real quick.
That's good.
That all these comments that we bring up, you know, even the little side jokes that we make, like, we do take it seriously. And there are a lot of voices that come and speak into the responses that we give. It's not just me or Sam or Avessa or Greg or AJ who respond individually from our viewpoints. That's not it at all. We actually compile all the information to do our due diligence to make sure the residents get their comments and concerns thoroughly addressed. So anyway, I appreciate your work on that one, Sam. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it was really, really interesting. And like you said, it was a lot of people really did come together and kind of discuss those issues, and including, like I said, Ken, who it's not even his department, but he just had some historical knowledge of it to share. Right. So it really does take everybody's heads coming together.
It sure does. So speaking of that, I think that's perfect time, Danielle, for you to kind of piggyback off of our conversation with Jesus, our city manager from last time, on growing Victoria. You alluded to it a few times. You know, it's a broad effort. It's kind of expanding even your roles and responsibilities. So can you talk to us beyond what the reason its importance is? We already heard from Jesus. Feel free to talk about that too. But what I want to hear from you more so is, what are you and everyone else behind this effort, which includes us, what do we need to do? What are we going to do to help grow Victoria? Not only we've been talking a lot about businesses, bringing them here, but population, like developable land. You know, that's, again, what we're talking about when we talk about growing Victoria.
Yep, absolutely. So something that I try to keep track of is the developable land, because ultimately, you know, I want to try to promote everything that we can develop inside the city limits or even redevelop. So if there's like an old vacant strip center or something like that, that's always good to promote for redevelopment, so that we aren't having to, the city isn't having to spend more money on extending utilities or streets to whatever location it is.
Right.
They're just basically recycling, if you will, what is already there and just rebuilding new what is already existing are on that site. So those are always ones that I try to push. New development is also very good, because, I mean, we're increasing the tax base. And any way that I can increase the tax base with commercial development, that puts less of a burden on the citizens, right? When it comes to taxes and paying your taxes and things like that. But then they also give us that sales tax revenue, right? So not only are we getting property tax, we're also getting sales tax off the commercial development. So that's what I try to focus on the most, is that commercial development, because it doesn't put such a burden on the citizens, right? But then you're also trying to consider, you know, will this be something that, like we talked about earlier, that the citizens in the community will get behind and support and shop there and dine there and do all those sorts of things. So it's very multifaceted, if you will. But we try to look at that, trying to recruit more businesses, trying to help the existing businesses, because I don't want to lose sight of the ones that we already have, because they are doing a lot of the heavy lifting as well. And we support and love them very much. And so, but other things is like student population at UHV. We need to increase that student population so we can become more of that college town, because that is an economic driver for sure. Being supportive of our local school district, and helping VISD and all the private schools with the students, because with Jonas, with VEDC, and him trying to recruit the primary jobs, we need a strong pipeline of education and students in getting good education to then stay here and get a job with those primary jobs, right? With the industrial type jobs, if they choose so, right? So that's very important too, because we would like to keep everybody here, but I know Victoria's not for everybody. You know, but we would always like to keep the citizens here and continue to grow the population here. Of course, affordable housing is very important, so we need to focus in that area as well. Having more and better quality homes for people to live in.
Right.
That's not, putting a burden on them and trying to pay mortgage and things like that.
Right.
And we've had some success in that area with Enchanted Gardens and a couple others that are coming down the pipeline with affordable housing or workforce housing.
Right.
So those are some of the things that we're really focusing on. We're going to be coming up with a more of a strategic plan, if you will, with goals and objectives on what each of these things look like for everybody. And it'll require some collaboration of all of the stakeholders that we have, those that I mentioned, VISD, UHV, even the healthcare system, because they're one of our major employers in the city, so forth and so on. And hopefully we can share our ideas, our initiatives, and all be marching forward in the same path to help grow. And quite honestly, I think just marketing Victoria in a way to some of these industries looking to move to Texas or businesses moving to Texas, because we've got like 1,300 people moving to Texas a day. And so if we could somehow just get a little piece of that pie and just grow a little bit more than the average 3% I think that we get every year now, it would do us a lot of good. Because point in case, when the first question that anybody asks me when I go to these conferences is, what's the population of Victoria? I'm like, oh, well, it's 65,000, but our retail trade area is a little over 200,000.
Right, meaning the county and surrounding.
Exactly.
Who travel into the
And they don't
city.
necessarily want the big retail area, even though it is good, but they want that population density. So the more we can redevelop and do that infill here in the city limits, the better. And everybody, I think, will benefit from it.
That's awesome.
And I think we have a graph that kind of illustrates that point, if you could bring it up, AJ.
Yeah.
Talking about growth. And we showed this during the last episode, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Something I want to make clear, too, is when we look at New Braunfels at this slide, I mean, they have exploded over the last few years. I am not suggesting that at all.
Right.
I'm just asking for maybe like 6% population growth
Right.
every year.
Greg and I just drove
kinda
through
double.
it this past week.
Exactly.
And it was insane, like the amount of traffic.
What is that
in
about? Like,
spot.
sidebar, why? What's going on in New Braunfels that I'm like, I have no idea about?
I think it's just location, really,
I was gonna say, look
right
at
off of
these towns.
35.
That are at the top. Look at the location they are to the bigger city next to them, and it's very close. And it could be a lot of people not wanting to live the actual city life, but just have a taste of it. So they're just going outside
and
of it.
I think that's what Danielle was talking about earlier is like people are moving to the suburbs more than before. And so if we can get a little piece of that pie, it'd be great.
Right.
I love what you were saying too about marketing. They're so important to market your community, to tell your story. I mean, obviously, we in communications talk about the importance of that all the time because we live and breathe it. It's our profession, but also our passion, you know, the spiel.
Yeah.
But our story as a community has to be told by us ourselves. I'm not talking about this government organization. I'm talking about like me, Ashley Strevel, who is building a family here, AJ Gonzalez and his family who's evolving, Sam Hankins and her acting, like all these personal, like we're residents here in Victoria. This is our community.
Yes.
Like Gary Moses said in your video, this is our town. But that's how we need to see it as like, this is our community. We got to take ownership. We got to take a positive stance in it because I think far too long personally and working here even more so, having a broad perspective of what people say about living here, it's way too negative. You got to stop that. And if you want businesses to believe in your story of Victoria, you got to tell it.
Yeah.
And no one else is going to do that for you. So anyway, I'm getting off my high horse.
No, that's good because
what say you,
instead of us asking the question, well, I mean, we can always ask why did you leave? Why are you leaving Victoria, right? But why are the ones staying?
Yeah.
Why are you choosing to stay? And I ask myself that too because, you know, I think, well, I feel safe here. I have a family. We have all the creature comforts that we need of a bigger city, but I can still get to Walmart in like 10 minutes. You know, it's not like a 30-minute or hour-long trip just to get there. And then if I want to travel, I'm only like an hour, 2 hours away from really cool things. So
I think there's always going to be pros and cons to any community you live in.
Absolutely.
There's people who are going to say, well, pay is better over here. Well, we're not that city and we don't have that many resources like
Right.
Sugarland on the screen. You can get out of there. That's you can get out of that screen.
That's depressing.
It's a
Let's
little
get rid of it.
depressing. But at the same time, like what I'm saying is don't have a false sense of the realities of your organization
Yeah.
or your community. Like we know our challenges.
Yes.
We do. Clearly. It's on the chart.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like if you're going to choose to take on something or live somewhere or be a role like a parent, then take full responsibility of that and be positive about it. That's always my life mantra, my life approach, but I don't know if that's everybody's, but that's what I would say. You're also saying, right, Danielle, is we've got to showcase ourselves in a productive manner. Because I don't want to be like false sense of positivity or like reality here, but like in a positive way to really get businesses to see that, buy into it, and then decide to come here. And then, of course, our community at large has to support that.
Right. Yeah. Because I didn't grow up here. I grew up in a small town of 500 people. And you talk about going from that to this, you know, this place has a lot of amenities. It even has a mall. Not everybody has a mall,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know?
That's
So,
true.
anyway.
That's really good. Well, I know we've talked a lot. Is there anything else that you can think of that our community needs to hear as it relates to, you know, all the things Growing Victoria, what you do?
So, Growing Victoria, we're still working on that website. Should have it up and running within a couple of months. So we'll have more information there for everybody to go check out. growingvictoriatx.com is the website, and you'll be able to keep track of everything that we're trying to do on that page. But especially with any other announcements, because I will have other announcements of other restaurants and shopping details.
Oh,
We like that.
So listeners, viewers, stay tuned because we're
Yes.
going to have Danielle on as a regular in case you're like, wow, this was really interesting. Don't worry, she's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So she'll be back. Cool. Well, speaking of, if you have any questions and you're listening viewers, or I always say watchers, viewers or listeners, you can email us at communications@victoriatx.gov. We can get your questions compiled for the next episode, which is going to be a Q&A fire away is what we're calling it. Fire away all those questions and we're going to just answer them. We're going to have some voices, some different people here on that episode just to switch things up a little bit, keep the pace going, bring back our city manager. There's a few things that I know he personally wanted to hit on as it relates to the misconception about like significantly higher property tax rates here in Victoria, which is false. I mean, yes, it did go up, but comparatively, like he's going to talk about that. But we want to bring Danielle back to talk about some more, you know, businesses and what they're up to and make sure they get appropriate kudos and shout outs as we can go. You know, that's marketing in itself, right? This podcast and helping get information out to residents, but hopefully other people are listening from around the state of Texas or whoever. Businesses, if you're listening, come to Victoria.
And don't forget, 'tis the season to shop and
Yes.
shop local.
Shop
And
local.
that's everything. That's from mom and pop shops
Yep.
to, you know, going out to eat right afterwards at Longhorn Steakhouse.
Yeah.
Whatever it may be.
Yep.
It's all part of the local economy. So
Believe it or not, when you shop online, do you want to talk about that real quick about
Sure.
Amazon? And
Yeah.
how-
So when you shop online, when you shop on Amazon, the sales tax doesn't actually come to Victoria. It goes to wherever the distribution center is. So be mindful of that.
Yep.
Because the more you shop local, all that sales tax dollars stays here in Victoria, and that gives us the ability to provide things for the city. Streets, roads, you know, all the things, parks.
General fund, which is pay for
pay. General fund.
employees.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, shop local this season, guys. 'Tis the season. Awesome. Well, again, if you're listening, we'll talk to you next time. Submit your questions and comments and concerns. Communications@victoriatx.gov. And we thank you again, and we'll chat with you next time. Hey guys, if this is your first time tuning into Town Talk or watching or listening online, we hope that you'll stay connected with us. Make sure to like, share, follow, subscribe, all the things, whether it be on Spotify or YouTube. Share it with your friends, family, coworkers, everybody that you can think of, because this is your community, your local government. We want you to stay informed. So make sure that you tune in next time. We hope that you'll stay with us on a regular basis, and we'll talk to you next time. Have a good one.